Hello YouTube. In this video, I just want to share some arguments that I have heard over the years that I am just sick and tired of hearing. Partially because they are just mindless, lazy attempts at justifying whatever cause they are defending. And also, it just has led to the deterioration of the political discourse in this country. And as a result, has led to a deterioration in the quality of life in this country as well. The first argument that I would like to berate against is, quote, insert terrible traumatic thing, blah blah blah. Oh, that would never happen in the United States of America. We believe in freedom and have safeguards in place that would protect against something like that. I just want to say never. Don't ever say nothing is impossible, because in many instances, you don't even have to look outside the borders of this country to find an example. You just have to look back in the history of this country. I mean, we had an entire race of people that we didn't even consider them people. We considered them property that were held as slaves for hundreds of years. We have had ethnic cleansing, mass genocide. That's what we did against the original indigenous inhabitants of this country. We have had many instances where the various freedoms granted to U.S. citizens in the Constitution have been negatively affected by the actions of top leadership in government. So don't ever claim that a threat against our democracy and freedom as something that is an impossibility, because it can very well become possible. The next argument that I want to talk about is, many people out there say that people spend too much time following politics instead of working and having a life. These stupid people, they're out there protesting while we're at work at a job. And I've heard this argument mostly from business owners and older folk that have enough money where they don't know what to do with their free time. And first of all, I just want to say, just because they're protesting during the day, while we're at work, doesn't necessarily mean they don't have jobs. I mean, there's plenty of work out there where you work night shift, or they work weekends, or they work in the afternoon. I just think that's a weak argument. Some of these people that I mentioned before, they turn around and claim that there is too much political apathy in our society when they want somebody to agree with their argument right then and there. I agree that your life shouldn't be consumed by politics, because you might become depressed and disillusioned, but at the same time, you shouldn't ignore the political situation going on in your country at the moment just for personal convenience. Because when you do ignore what is going on, the people in power are gonna use that to their advantage and go about passing legislation and doing other things that are going to just benefit them and their friends at the top. And people that need to get involved, they need to speak up. They need to say that this country is for everybody, not just the people at the top. Y'all need to be looking out for us too. The next argument is basically U.S. exceptionalism, and I don't mean arguing that we are the greatest country on earth. There's people out there that will argue that a certain policy just wouldn't work in this country. I hear that argument a lot, mostly when it's an argument between a conservative and liberal. They like to beat down the progressive argument that it's just too outlandish, it's too foreign. This is the United States, a country of some 300 million people, a capitalist country. It just wouldn't work in this country as much as you want it to. It just wouldn't work in the United States. And I just personally hate that argument, because throughout history, we have always been the country that hasn't let what seems to be impossible stop us from making the impossible possible. For example, during the 1960s, JFK said that we're gonna put a man on the moon, and people were like, bullshit, we're not gonna put a man on the moon. But then JFK challenged the country to come together and put the resources together to put a man on the moon, and lo and behold, we did that in 1968. And then going even further back, that slavery was such a divisive topic that we had a civil war over it. people were like, slavery is such a big part of the Southern economy and American society. No way would we be able to get rid of that institution. But no, the country came together and we banned slavery. And also, going back to the 1960s, the Civil Rights Act, it was the same story. No one would think that it could get passed in a majority white country. And it's like the same story with so many other topics, especially with our scientists and inventions. I just think that's a bad argument and it's a lazy argument. It's basically a self-defeatist, giving up type of argument. I argue that since we are the United States, anything is possible, so we shouldn't necessarily not try to pass something that will help the country just because some people think that it's not possible within these borders. Now, on the opposite end of that spectrum, we are the greatest country on earth and any criticism is unpatriotic, and if you don't like it, then leave! First of all, these colors don't run, they fight. If you think some comment on the internet is gonna convince me to leave, you're wrong. Plus, I bet you were bitching and moaning the entire time your preferred candidate wasn't in office. So, you didn't like it, but you stayed. Why would it be any different for other Americans of other political persuasions? Third, other countries have said the same thing, and it never works out for them. Because usually the people that leave end up being the younger workers who put money into their economies, the people that are fighting for beneficial political change, and the educated folks. Sometimes it's called brain drain. Yay! We got rid of them whiny Marxist college students. Only later they would find that there are no people to fill specialized positions within their country's economy, and these moneymakers aren't present to help the native country's economy. Which, by the way, the US has benefited from this issue for generations, attracting talent from around the globe. Immigrants benefit with a better life, and the country benefits with their contributions. The next trashy argument, and it's kind of like similar to the fourth argument I'm going to list. It's a current administration taking credit for the progress made during the previous administration. And to kind of dive into the next argument, which is similar, it's that the previous administration did the same thing, so that completely justifies the current administration's mistakes. Alright, let me address the first part of this topic first. This is an argument that has lasted for decades, but I feel like it has really become more prevalent in the last couple decades with the advent of the internet. People's minds have the attention span of a goldfish, and it's just frustrating. They're focused on the here and now. Part of that is people just are too lazy and not willing to do the research, look up the facts, and now to start talking about the second half of this argument, I explained like they're both kind of similar in the sense that they're basically not holding the current administration accountable, and they're either taking credit for something that the credit should be given to the previous administration, but at the same time blaming all the problems that the current administration is facing with the inability of the last administration to properly govern. And I just think that you can't have it both ways. You gotta take responsibility for what's going on here, right now, and then my opinion, whatever happens past January 20th of the first year you take office, you're immediately responsible, and you need to take accountability for all that goes on now. You may not agree and criticize the policies of the previous administration, but you gotta counter that with, hey, here's how I'm going to address those issues. For example, Trump is terrible for whatever reason, and the rebuttal is, well, I'm about to blow your mind. Did you know that Biden did the same thing? Yeah, I know. Biden sucks. You didn't blow my mind. What's the current administration's solution? These arguments are just a justification for a race to the bottom. Now, my least favorite argument that honestly triggers me, and that is, we're a constitutional republic, not a democracy. This argument is usually made in defense of the status quo, and when I was at work a couple months ago, this guy made this argument to me. And by the way, he has the audacity to also claim that what we need is, as people, is that we should set up a time each year where the people are going to go up to the ballot boxes and they vote on whatever issue themselves. We already have that. They're called propositions. Sometimes they're called referendums. For example, in 2022, Kansas had a referendum on abortion, and other places call it a plebiscite. Whatever the hell you want to call it, we already have that. And the concerning thing is there is a party in this country that isn't respecting the wishes of the voters. For example, that example is in Missouri. The people voted on a proposition to guarantee paid sick leave for workers. But then the governor and the legislature turned around and said, no, we're not going to honor and respect the wishes of the voters in this proposition. We're going to instead get rid of paid sick leave for workers and act on our own accordance. Now that is such a slap in the face to the voters, it's sick. We may not be a democracy, but if we're going to really take your argument seriously, are we really a republic either? Like, we are increasingly becoming, in more accurate terms, like an autocracy and an oligarchy, which neither has a similarity to a republic or a democracy. And, okay, we're not a democracy, but we're not a republic either if the leadership isn't abiding by the rules set forth by the Constitution. The elected representatives aren't doing good by the will of the people. I just think it's one of the laziest, self-defeating arguments out there in politics today. As an added bonus, I just want to include this argument. Now, this argument is a little bit more partisan than the other examples given, which were more generic and wide-reaching. I hate it when people claim that workers nowadays are too soft and coddled and they just need to put their heads down and work and stop complaining. It's true that workers in the past dealt with much harsher conditions and were treated like shit. And you know what they did? Yes, they did put their heads down and continue to work. But they also put their foot down, got loud and angry, organized and unionized, made their voices heard, and demanded the respect they deserve. This little bit might trigger some people, but you don't see black folk lamenting to their youth, hey, we were slaves and picked cotton for 20 hours a day for free. And now you got these damn kids nowadays, they're getting paid. You don't know what it's like. You should probably get a little bit of taste of slavery. No, they ain't saying that. They're advocating for even more rights. And, like, I know that in 2025, it may seem lazy that people are using more machinery, but I'm sorry that people are using machinery nowadays instead of using a plow from the 1920s. That's just people nowadays taking the advantage of advances in technology. It'd be stupid not to use that technology. It makes them more efficient, more productive. They're making more money for themselves and for their boss. If anything, workers nowadays, they need to start raising their voice. They need to start organizing, unionizing. They need to start voting in their own self-interest, not in the self-interest of the billionaires and the business owners of this country. Alright, I'm getting off my soapbox for that little argument there. If you made it to the end, thank you for listening to my video. What are some of the least favorite arguments you have heard? And as always, thank you. And if you like this video, leave a like and subscribe, and have a blessed day.